Welcome to the Data Career Podcast. Here's your host, Avery Smith.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 21 of the Data Career Podcast. We have an awesome episode for you here today. We have Matt Francis joining us. Matt, welcome to the Data Career Podcast.
Hey Avery, hey everybody, thanks for having me.
Yes, for everyone who is watching live, go ahead and say hello. We can see you in the comments. And excited to have you guys. For those who are not listening live, hi to you guys too. We can't see your comments though. I'm going to give a quick introduction for those who don't know Matt. If you're watching live or if you're on a podcast, go ahead and press pause and search Matt Francis on LinkedIn and give him a follow. Matt's a really cool guy, really active on LinkedIn. Currently a data scientist for General Mills, and that's the company that makes some of my favorite foods, including Lucky Charms, Yoplait, and Pillsbury. I love Lucky Charms. Lucky Charms underrated. He's worked as a data scientist for, how do I say it? Tesla, which is a data science consulting firm, as well as oil major ConocoPhillips. His undergrad is in geology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and then he's earned a master's in geology from Virginia Tech. Like I said, super active on LinkedIn and focuses on helping geoscientists and oil professionals to transfer or use data science skills in their career. So super excited to have Matt on the podcast. Really good resource for all of you, for everyone, but also specifically for geologists and engineers, specifically in the oil and gas field. That's his experience, and excited to learn a lot from him today. So anyways, thanks for being on the pod, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're going to get right into it. I would love to know how you got into data, because we just went through your background, right? And geology is, we heard a lot about geology there. How did you get into data?
Man, I sort of just like fell into it almost. And it was a product of the insane commodity cycle that oil and gas kind of interacts with and is the victim of almost. So I was laid off from ConocoPhillips in 2018. Spent 6 years with them before that, doing a lot of different geology tasks, but never was coding, was never really doing a lot of deep data analysis. I mean, geology as a profession is like analytically focused. It's a science. We look at, interpret, and make recommendations based on those interpretations of various geology data, whether it's rocks, fluids, or whatnot. But I didn't have a strong like data science background coming out of ConocoPhillips. After I was laid off, I was not thinking I was going to jump into data science. I was like, wanted to get back into another geology role for another oil company, because that's what I was. That was my label. That's what I labeled myself. That's what everybody else had labeled me. But after struggling to find interviews and opportunities in the geology space, I started thinking about what I could do in my time to skill up, to make myself more attractive to oil and gas companies and make myself more valuable as a future employee. Sort of fell into enrolling into a data science bootcamp through a company called Thinkful, online-based bootcamp, and I think we'll probably talk to bootcamps in a little bit. But the more I studied, the more practice I did, learning Python, learning machine learning, building analyses and machine learning models to predict things during the course of the bootcamp. The more I fell in love with it and realized that what I actually loved about geology was not like the rocks. It was more of the analytical framework and thinking behind the work that I was doing as a geologist. So at some point, I had the realization that it was going to be easier to find an entry level data science job or analytics job than find another geology job in a very difficult oil and gas job market. And sort of hit the ground running and shifted my job search from geology jobs to data science, and essentially started at Tesela as a data science consultant immediately following my boot camp.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. That's a really cool story. Thank you for sharing with us. I'm gonna touch on the geology thing. So you said you didn't really like necessarily the rocks in geology, but you liked the problem solving behind it, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's super nerdy, but like I didn't ever really care about petroleum systems or learning about oil rocks specifically. And I had that slow realization. I don't think I actually really realized it while I was employed as a geologist at ConocoPhillips. But looking back on it, I could certainly see myself becoming less enamored with the actual day-to-day activities and what I was having to or being asked to think through as part of that job. So I still enjoy thinking about like Earth systems and thinking about how the Earth has evolved over the last 4.5 billion years, but I wasn't getting that satisfaction out of thinking about oil rock specifically, and it's a super niche thing. And for me to be saying that I like some rocks but not other rocks is probably sounds weird to some people. But that's kind of what I felt like. It was almost like, yeah, I enjoy this broad field, but I don't enjoy doing this one niche thing, and I'm comfortable enough walking away from that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you find that your skills that you had learned, through an undergrad and a master's in geology, and then through, 6 years of working, did you find that those geology skills transferred over into data science well, or not really?
So like the broad-based analytical thinking skills, communication skills, those sorts of things definitely do transfer. But like I mentioned, I wasn't coding. I wasn't querying databases with SQL. I was building visualizations in Excel and sometimes in Spotfire, but I wasn't doing anything fancy. I mean, I built a couple of linear regressions in Excel and used those occasionally, but I mean, there were no the technical skills don't overlap really between the two professions. At least they didn't when I was employed 3 years ago as a geologist. So there wasn't much for me to take from geology and use that at least in my day to day as a data scientist, like technically. But what I do have from that is the communication skills, is the strategic thinking. A lot of the projects that I was working on as a geologist have had really long time scales. So from the moment I would work on a project, it might be 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road before that project would ever be potentially realized by the business. So it was always a strategic view on what work can we do today to impact the business in the future. And I'm taking that strategic level thinking into my role as a data scientist and looking at what the business is doing now, and then thinking about how we can enhance and enable that work to be done now, but also looking towards the future and how we can build something better for the business.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So at least some of the strategic thinking as well as the communications and just like problem solving analytical skills transferred well, but maybe not all the technical. And let's talk about your first job outside of that boot camp at Tesela. Why were they interested in you? Like, how did you land that job? Did the boot camp kind of help there, or what was the path to that first job outside of the boot camp?
Yeah, so Tesela is kind of a specialty data and analytics consulting company. One of their core industries that they serve is energy and oil and gas.
Mm.
So they were really interested in my background as a geologist, as somebody with the technical understanding and their operational experience in the oil and gas sector, as well as somebody having at least some elementary analytics and machine learning data science skills to go on top of that. So the background is what piqued their interest. My experience at the boot camp was highlighted during the interview process. So I was talking through a number of my different projects and highlighting those and apparently impressing them enough with the project-based work that that they handed me a job offer, and I happily accepted.
Okay, awesome. So I'm hearing a couple of things there. Well, first, yeah, I was curious about if Tesela did data science in like energy or in geology. It sounds like that was true. So I think that's something that's good to highlight to people, that even though if your background isn't in data, often that's often preferred, because doing data science for data science sake is kind of stupid. You're always trying to solve a business problem at the end of the day, right? And if you have the background, the business background or the domain background, and then you add these data skills, it can make you really valuable. And some companies rather have someone with domain skills with the technical skills added, but versus just hiring a straight data science. Because like if you're a straight data scientist and you've never touched in the domain, I like to give this example. When I was at Exxon, so we have kind of the similar, petroleum energy backgrounds. We had data science competitions. And most of the time it was just like me as like the only like engineer versus all of these like IT data scientists. And we had one project where it had to do with like basically oil purity and just like oil properties. And they were always like, okay, so there's a lot of sulfur in this oil. Is that good or is that bad? And that's just something, as an IT data scientist, you never understand the domain well enough, versus as a chemical engineer, I'm like, okay, that's the first thing you need to know if you work for an oil company, is that sulfur is bad for oil.
Yeah.
And you just don't get the domain knowledge unless you have the domain knowledge. So right. I'm glad to hear they saw that in you. And just going back to the thing that also impressed them, you said it was mostly the projects you'd done in the boot camp. What projects did you do, and how did you pitch them to this company?
Yeah, so I mean, and I want to go back to domain experience in a little bit because it's a fascinating transition. Taking this new role in General Mills just a couple of months ago, but I think we could touch on that a little bit later.
Yeah, sure.
So like projects, I mean, Tesela is really keen on continuous learning and showing that you can continuously skill up, learn new things quickly. So what I actually did is I showed them a project that I was working on at the time. It was not complete. It wasn't finished. It was a work in progress. So I walked them through, I think it was an NLP project that I was working on. I had scraped some transcripts of TED Talks from YouTube, and I was trying to classify them and see see if I could classify them into certain topics through some clustering, and then see if I could distinguish which topics got more views, more likes, more engagement. So it was a way to like try to help TED book more talks of things that would get more engagement. So that's the sort of logic that I was talking through. It wasn't that I said I did this machine learning, I used this machine learning algorithm to solve this problem that the bootcamp handed me with this data set that they also handed me. This was an open-ended, do an NLP project. So I was like, okay, what sounds interesting to me? And it took me probably a week to figure out what I wanted to do for that project. I hadn't seen anybody try to do this sort of project before, so it was new to me to scrape the data. It was new to me to do the types of clustering that I was trying. It was new to me to do some of the NLP work that I was doing, and all of this was new. And I kept saying that while I was presenting to them, like I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if this is right, but here's what I'm learning. Here's where I was like 3 weeks ago, and here's here's how quickly I've skilled up, and here are my recommendations, and here's my path forward for the rest of the analyses. And I think that's what really struck them as something interesting and important, especially in a consulting role where you're always jumping in and expected to deliver very quickly. And I think that's really what played strongly to their interests. But that goes into like understanding what the interests of each company that you're interviewing for are, and understanding how you can potentially weave a narrative that will pique their interest.
Yeah, I love that. I love that the idea of not even having the project done, that's so cool, because I think a lot of people will have fears about sharing an unfinished project. They'll have like imposter syndrome. It's not good enough. Like, I don't actually know if this is going to work, but you just kind of embrace that. And that seems that was interesting to them. I think that takes a lot of bravery, but I think it also shows humility, the ability to continuously learn. You're like, I don't know everything, but I want to know, and I'm going to try these things. And I think also just talking through that probably was really impressive, because I think a lot of the time when we're talking to recruiters, they're more curious about the way your brain works and the way you approach problems than how you have solved problems in the past. I mean, obviously they want to see what you've done in the past, but they're like, okay, well, how did you think through that problem? Because that's what's important to them, right?
Yeah. And especially coming from like somebody without experience. I mean, you're not going to have any metrics to fall back on. You're not going to have any dollars and cents to say that you provided value into a company. So you've got to stand out somehow. And actually, that's not the only time that I've showcased an unfinished project. I did it late last year when I was kind of interviewing for a number of different companies during the time I was interviewing with General Mills. I essentially had a project idea that kind of fit the niche of this specific company. I had aspirations of getting like some sort of POC model out the door by the time I interviewed. But it turned out that I didn't have time in the weeks leading up to that interview. So I just laid out in a slide deck, what my thought process was, what I was thinking about doing, and what this new sort of data product would be for that company.
And this is, so you were applying for this company and you did this project just so you could basically talk to them about it during the interview. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was my goal, because they wanted another presentation on some sort of project, and I didn't have anything that kind of fit the bill of what this company does. So I was like, okay, I've got a cool idea for a project. Let me see if I can get something out the door. I couldn't make that happen, but I had a lot of ideas, so I kind of messaged them up in a nice slide deck, and said, this is what I would do. Here's my thought. I would try this and this using this data, and here's where the value would be, and here's who the customer would be.
I think that's awesome. Everyone who's watching or listening, definitely take note here. The idea that you can just, you can do this. You can always just apply to every single job the exact same way, right? That's definitely a possibility. But if you really want to be really effective, you need to tailor your application to every job you're doing. And in this case, Matt went pretty far, and he did like a project specifically tailored for this person he was interviewing for. But you can do that with your resume. You can do that with your cover letter. You can shift things around to highlight different attributes of yourself so that you're more attractive to this specific interviewer that you're interviewing for. So you might have, let's say you have 5 data science projects, but on your resume, you only have room for 2 of them. You might highlight the 2 that are most applicable to that industry, or you might make a 6 that's really, you think about what keeps this company up late at night. Like, what are they worried about? What are some problems they have? And then try to solve that problem for them. Even if you don't even complete solving the problem for them, just show that you've put some thought into it.
Exactly.
I think that can go a lot of ways. So that's a great example, Matt. Everyone definitely follow Matt's example there. I see we have a question here from Sadia that I want to take on, but I'll take it on after we go back to a little bit about that domain knowledge. So you're applying for you get out of this boot camp, you apply for Tesela. They're interested in you because you have, you're kind of new to the data science world, but you have some technical skills, and you have a really good domain background. So they like you for that. They hire you. You work as, a data science consultant for however many, years. And I'm guessing you continue to learn as you're going, right? Okay. And then eventually you're to the point now where your domain background doesn't necessarily need to help you. You took the first step and you got a job that you could qualify for because you were kind of leaning heavily on the domain background. But then after being there for however many years you no longer needed the domain background crutch. You could kind of apply for any data science position. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. So that's how it felt. That's not what I did. I wasn't applying to every company out there. So because I had a job, because I was employed as a data scientist, I could then pick and choose, where I wanted to go
You could be picky.
Yeah. Being picky isn't necessarily great because, if you're putting out less chances to have interviews and to get positions. But yeah, I mean, moving from Tesela, doing mainly oil and gas consulting, to General Mills, making grocery products, food products, Cheerios, Lucky Charms, Trix, Yoplait. There's absolutely no domain experience crossover there. So I'm now something like 5 months into this new job, and I'm still soaking up new information on a daily, hourly basis. But that's okay because I know how to implement solutions, how to talk to business stakeholders and get engagement from them, how to set strategic goals and gain alignment. So it's not necessary for me to have the domain experience, but now I'm being asked to bring more of that technical experience into this position.
How has it been? Have you liked it so far?
Yeah, it's been really fascinating. I now, when I go in the grocery store now, I look at it completely differently. You don't realize how methodically it is laid out and categorized. So like we think about like center store sales, which is like boxed goods, and then you've got the outer aisles, you've got refrigerated section. I mean, you know that when you go into a grocery store, but you don't think about like how a business categorizes things and how they cluster things together. And you also don't realize that like the sales that you see at grocery stores, those are not put on by the actual grocery stores. The producers of that food pay for that sale in the grocery store. So when you see Lucky Charms like 2 for $4, that's General Mills paying Walmart or Target to put that promotion on. So actually that's like a large part of what I'm doing is trying to optimize those sales, those promotions in order to drive greater volume of sales and bigger revenue. But yeah, I mean, trying to huck Cheerios is much different than trying to do POC oil and gas machine learning projects, which is completely different than doing oil field exploration.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. Now I'm going to think of the grocery store a lot different. I know I've done a homework problem kind of about like grocery stores and what's bought in pairs, like you whenever you buy cereal, you're probably buying milk. And where do you want to put those items? How do you optimize those items best for your store to make profit and stuff like that? I guess, is there any other like I know you probably can't get into specifics, but like general ideas that you're working on currently for General Mills that you can speak on? And if not, maybe talk about an example of how data science was used at like Tesla kind of for geology, if there's anything that you can speak on. I know that kind of gets iffy.
Yeah, so I mean, at General Mills, the most of what I'm doing is supporting an in-house application that we've built to optimize our sales at grocery stores. I mean, other things that we do are like more manufacturing related, so how to optimize the throughput of a manufacturing line. Like we make Old El Paso is one of our brands. So how do we make tortillas with less waste product? So there was a POC project that went on last year with a camera over the assembly line. It estimated the diameter of the tortillas coming off the line. If they were outside of spec, it would send that message up the line, and the machinery would automatically resize the press to eliminate waste, which saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think, annually on tortilla manufacturing. So that was one example from us. In terms of geology, it's actually difficult, and part of the reason it's difficult is because I've been out of the game now for 3 years. But I think geology is one of the fields that's going to be most difficult to implement data science solutions for, because it's got a data problem. Like rock data is super expensive to get, and it's super spatially variable and limited in quantity. So, I mean, I was working offshore Gulf of Mexico exploration. We had something like 50 different wells that penetrated the sections that we were interested in. So you're thinking about the whole Gulf of Mexico, but you've only got 50 samples to use to base your models on. You don't need machine learning to do that. You can mentally handle that quantity of data and do some simple statistics based off of that. What's more interesting from a data science perspective in oil and gas is the chemical stuff that you would have been interested in, Avery, production trends, stuff that is more operationally based, where you've got sensor data coming in every second, every half second, every minute, even daily data is much more. There's so much more of it to do more things with than you do of like actual rock data. And then kind of in the intermediate spaces, fields that are adjacent to geology. This is going to be super niche just to oil and gas folks, but things like petrophysics, reservoir engineering, and geophysics, where you do have a better sampling of the subsurface with more continuous data. That is where I've seen kind of the most activity in terms of data science applications, because you do have that data to actually utilize.
Yeah, that makes sense. You have to have data to do data science. So if you have limited data,
Yep.
that makes it hard. Okay, thank you for sharing. The tortilla thing was really cool too. Yeah, super fascinating. I'll think about that more when I'm eating my tricks in the morning. What data science went into making this. Okay, great. Let's transition a little bit back to education and career building. I wanted to get to this question here from Sadia. Can you talk a little bit more about the advantages of going to a boot camp versus an online master's program? And I have some thoughts on this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, sure. So there's like two main things that I think of when thinking about kind of an educational pivot into data science. So that's kind of speed and cost. I think I mean, a boot camp is going to be faster, and it should be cheaper than a master's program. It's definitely not going to have the depth and probably not the quality that a master's program is going to have. just because it's wrapping up in 20 weeks or something rather than 2 years. That being said, I do think there's a place for boot camps. I don't think that they're for everyone, but they can be used quite effectively. I mean, I'm an example of that. I think the people who should be doing boot camps are either those that have some technology background, coding experience, or like a STEM degree, somebody that's a highly analytical thinker will probably do just fine in a boot camp scenario. A master's program is better off for people that are coming from further afield. I don't know, the artists, the English majors, the people without traditional backgrounds. That's where you're going to probably see the most benefit of doing a master's program.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting because you've done a boot camp and I've done a master's program. So it's kind of funny. Together we have kind of, I guess, dueling educations. And it's hard to really know fully what the other experience is, because I've never been in a boot camp, right? And I know you've done a master's, right? Did you do that? Did you do that full time, like in person?
The master's, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In geology.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's also interesting because I did my master's online part-time. Mm-hmm. So there's just differences there. I agree with a lot of what you said. Don't think boot camps are for everyone, but I definitely think there's a good place for them. I do agree that I think if you have a STEM background, specifically, like if we were going into science and engineering, like I think they make great data scientists. Those analytical skills, like we talked about earlier, transfer really well. Problem solving transfers really well. A lot of the math, or at least you can learn a lot of the math. I think that's very true. I'm going to be posting a little bit more about this in the future. I'm a little disappointed with my master's, to be perfectly honest. It was okay. It was an okay experience. It got worse as it went on, which is interesting. And I went to Georgia Tech, and it's one of the best like online masters for data science that there is. So it's not like some crappy program. It's a good program. But I think they scaled pretty large, and it was pretty difficult for them just to like keep up with the amount of numbers they were having in the course. I didn't find the teaching particularly engaging. I had one course where they like pretty much taught you nothing, and you're just supposed to Google everything, which is fine. I actually like that. Like, yeah. I think you can.
That's what I do.
Yeah, that's real life. Yeah, and I'm fine with that. Like, I'm actually okay with that. But it was a little sporadic all over the board. So, anyways, I think both can be good. I think what you said is good. The price point and the time it takes is really big. Yeah, price point's huge because sometimes a master's is more expensive. Like they can be like 40 grand, right? And sometimes like at Georgia Tech, it's 12 grand, and yeah. a boot camp can be 20 grand. So yeah, there's definitely price points there. One thing that I'm trying to do to help people with this is I'm basically taking the good out of the Georgia Tech analytics program and do my own boot camp. It's going to be $2,000, which is a lot cheaper than, most boot camps. Yeah. So I think because I definitely think you don't need a master's. I don't think you need one unless you want one,
No. So, and let's, the unasked question is like, which certificate is better? And I hate that question. The certificate doesn't matter. It's your skills that do. The master's might get you noticed more often during like the HR screening process. But at the end of the day, I'm of the opinion that either one is fine. And I don't think the name on the certificate doesn't matter as long as you're on there somewhere.
Yeah. The certificate, and you have a post about this. I think it's even in your featured section, maybe. I don't know. That basically says, I'm sick of people posting their certificates. They don't matter. And that's so true. And that's the whole point. I'm trying to think. I'm looking in my office trying to find my diploma. I don't know where my diploma is for any of my degrees.
I actually know where mine is, but it's still in the box.
Okay. It's a piece of paper.
8 years later.
It's a piece of paper. No one cares about a piece of paper in tech now. What they care about is what you talked about, your projects, right? You said even your boot camp, it wasn't the certificate that made them interested, or maybe the boot camp helped you get through the HR screening, like you said. But when it actually comes down to getting hired, it's the projects that you've done. And so that's one thing I'm really focusing on with Data Career Jumpstart is there's no homework ever, there's zero homework. There's only projects. And that's how we learn everything is by you do a project. So you want to learn Python? Great. We're starting right in with the project. You don't get a warm up. We're just doing a project. And then you add it to your portfolio. And then when you get an interview, you have your project that you can present to someone. So yeah, you're totally right. And I love that post from you that don't post your certificates, post your projects.
Yeah, it comes off a bit harsh. I mean, I'm proud of you for putting in the effort to get that certificate, but at the end of the day, show me the skills, show me the value, show me what you've learned. Don't show me the piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. That's a good point. Did have a question here from a LinkedIn user. Matt, which boot camp did you go to?
So I used Thinkful. They've kind of diversified their offerings now. So what I took was, I think what they call the flex option now, the data science flex option. It's supposedly part-time, but I was doing it full-time. But it's pretty comparable from what I've seen to things like Springboard and Flatiron are two comparable offerings. So yeah, there's a number of things that I think you should look out for if you're looking at the bootcamp option. That's kind of one-on-one mentorship. 2, you want something that is lengthy. Don't do something that's like 10 weeks or something. That's not enough time to gain the skills if you're coming from essentially zero. You want something that's at least 3 or 4 months, probably like 6 months. I mean, it took me 6 months to get through the Thinkful bootcamp. And then some career coaching at the end to help you revise your resume, fix up your LinkedIn profile, and get you ready to convey your specific reasoning for making the pivot into data science and help you with that narrative from A to B. Yeah,
that's a huge one. I see a lot of boot camps that will teach you the technical stuff, right? But they don't teach you some of the helpful tips in your career building, which is half the battle, And so they actually go hand in hand, in my opinion. If you can build projects and then put them in a portfolio, you really increase your resume, you increase your personal brand. It just helps you so much more. No one wants to talk about a resume, but if you, like you talked about earlier, you did a TED Talk, YouTube screening and clustering on that. Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more,
Yep.
But if you just write that as like a sentence on your resume, or if you just say, hey, I learned clustering, then it doesn't really help.
Falls flat.
Yeah. Okay. We had a couple questions. We have one here from Sunita. How can I learn more about the bootcamp? You can check out datacareerjumpstart.com and sign up for updates there. And then if you want to search any of the Flatiron, or you could just search them on Google. They're very good at spending ad dollars for Google AdSense. If you Google data science bootcamp, they'll be at the top, guarantee that. But for mine, check out datacareerjumpstart.com. We also had Scott Taylor stop by and say hello, and he was asking about the state of data science at General Mills. Is it in good shape, Matt? Do we have anything to worry about?
No. Thanks for the question, Scott. Data science at General Mills is kind of booming business right now. We are, I think there's a little bit of a pause, but we are basically continuing to ramp up quickly. We've got a global kind of data science footprint, and we are I mean, the project that I'm supporting, the dollar value on the investment from the business during this current process is in the billions. So any small improvement in that is big dollars. And there's a lot of other low-hanging fruit still left to grab. So we are rapidly maturing. I would say we've got kind of an enterprise data organization of something like 300 or 350 people.
Wow.
The data science is just one small component of that, but we build out project teams, product teams to develop internal solutions and help the business be more nimble, be more efficient, and generate more value for the shareholder.
Sweet. That's good to hear, especially for my lucky charms. That's what I like to hear.
Yes.
We had another question from a LinkedIn user. Any thoughts on data incubator? I've never heard of that. Have you?
No. Is that a boot camp? I'm not sure.
It's probably some sort of boot camp. But sorry, LinkedIn user, we do not know. But like we said, make sure if you're taking a boot camp, it has good technical, it has what you want to learn, has a good price point, and it has career applications or career help. I think those are the big check marks to have. Okay, switching into, I guess we're already here, but talking about a little bit more about your career. What's your advice to, I guess, anyone, but specifically engineers and geoscientists who want to break into data science? What's your suggestion to them?
I would ask you if you actually do want to break into data science. Everybody now says that they want to do that. They want to be more diversified in their skill set, either to expand their roles and responsibilities in their current job title, or it is to pivot into data. But I think what goes unasked too often is like, do you actually want to be a data scientist? And the reason I would ask that is data roles are so much more widely varied than just a data scientist, and it's not just data science. Actually, to be truthful, I don't do all that much data science in my role right now, but I'm a data scientist in job title, and that's fine. I actually like what I do. I like how I help the business, but there's data analysts, there's data engineers, there's BI visualization experts. There's the spectrum is huge. Don't get narrowed in. Don't get siloed into thinking it's data science or bust. So consider a wide options in your roles, and that's the more that I've have a space on my layoff in 2018, the more I realized that I was so focused on being like, I went to school as got a geology major, geology master's. I'm a geologist, damn it. But that was just tunnel vision, and having your blinders taken off, seeing the world as your oyster, and finding out what you actually want to do and how you can best impact a business or people like you've just taken off from Exxon and started this consulting business and this boot camp. So, don't silo yourself is my main point there.
Yeah, I think that's actually really interesting. You actually brought it up at the beginning of the podcast. You were like, I labeled myself a geoscientist. I was a geoscientist. And I think sometimes we have the opposite problem now, where I am not a data scientist, so I do not do data science. And that's just wrong. Data science is for anyone. It's for everyone. It's like saying that mathematicians are the only people who can do math. It's like, no, business people use math, scientists use math, engineers use math. Like, for me, data science is more of a mindset than it is a title. And I think it often people just think of it as a title and not like as a mindset. So yeah, I love that advice. Okay, what about advice separate from data? Just like, what's good career advice that has served you well in your career?
Well, man, we got these questions mixed up. That was my answer. So
okay.
So let me pivot then.
Okay.
If you do want to go into data science,
Uh-huh.
you don't need to learn everything all at once. You don't need to be an expert in NLP, in deep learning, in visualization. You don't need to know every statistical test there is. You don't need to know how to implement every single method in sklearn. You need to do some foundational work to get yourself up to what is entry level. And what's entry level at Facebook or Google, what's talked about most broadly in on the internet, like how to crack the code interview. I would fail all of those interviews all of the time. So you can be perfectly valuable to a specific company without meeting the mold of a Google data scientist.
Yeah, 100%. Super true. There's different. Yeah, you don't need to be like the best data scientist on planet Earth to get a data science entry job. That's definitely not the case. And you don't have to know everything. I'm like we talked about NLP earlier. For those who don't know, NLP is natural language processing, and it's like machine learning on text, like written text. And I'm not great at it. I'm not that good at it. But it's okay because data science, like we talked about earlier, you even said there's like, okay, there's data analysts, there's data engineers, there's visualization experts. There's more roles than just data science. Well, even data scientists, even just inside the term or the role data scientist, there's so many different roles that you could be. You could be a computer vision, specialist. You can be an NLP specialist. You can be a data visualization specialist. Like, there's so many roles inside of data science, and just the data realm is so broad. You don't have to know all of it perfectly. If you specialize on one thing, if you're like the best cloud, data scientist there is, you can make such a good living only being good at one part of data science. That's totally allowed.
Yep, for sure. And don't just jump into the industry because you're chasing the money, because there's more to it than that.
Yes, exactly. I came out with a YouTube video recently that oh wait, is it not released yet? I can't remember. But it's 5 reasons. It's 5 reasons that you should want to be a data scientist. And money, I think, is number 4 on the list. Like the pay is good, but there's other things, namely for me, the ability to be creative and like do something that I actually really enjoy. It's just awesome. Okay, couple questions or couple comments here. We have Derek. A lesson I found to be true is ideally you should have a more specific goal than be a data scientist. Totally.
Yep.
Pick a time, pick an industry, maybe not even, maybe you make it a little less specific too. And maybe it's not data scientist, maybe it's have a data career, and it could be a lot of different things. So I agree with that, Derek. Also comment here from Dustin. The awesome thing is that if you identify an opportunity to solve something and make a decision to care about it / set out to solve it, there are so many folks that can help in technical areas where you may not personally have expertise. Definitely true.
For sure.
Google and Stack Overflow, best friends.
Yeah. So like have a specific project in mind, like Derek's point, and then make a decision to care about it, to Dustin's point, and then you'll have something awesome to talk about in your next interview.
Totally. Well, awesome. Thank you, Matt. This was really good advice. I think hopefully everyone listening, you wrote something down that you're going to try. Try to follow Matt's career. Even when we were talking, I was thinking about doing a LinkedIn post about Matt's, evolution, because he got the skills, landed a job that utilized his domain, continued to develop the skills where he no longer needed the domain, and then landed a full data scientist job. I think that's a great path. That's very similar to what I did. And yeah, I think that story is really great. I did want to get you out of here on a fun question though. All right. And let's talk about running, Matt. You've been running recently?
Yes, I picked up my running. I was in a little bit of a lull, had an injury, some acute tendonitis after I ran the Houston full marathon in January. But
oh wow, congrats.
Now I'm training for the Twin Cities Marathon in October.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. How many marathons have you done?
Um, I guess two officially for races, and then one I was just running with some other buddies.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's so cool. I'm trying to get into running and be like Matt. What do you feel like? I guess why do you run? I have actually. Hold on. Let me see. I have this book. I want to show you. I bought this book. It's called "I Hate Running and You Can Too:
Yeah.
How to Get Started, Keep Going, and Make Sense of an Irrational Passion." So I guess, do you hate running first off? And I guess if you do, why do you keep doing it?
I do not hate running.
Okay.
I think if you hate running, you should slow down. You're probably running too fast. No, so running is something that I started in like junior high. I was on the cross country track teams then, and it's something that's kind of ebbed and flowed in my adult life. But um, I enjoy that it's simple. Like you literally just put on some shoes, put on some shorts, and you can be out the door and go run. And the simple fact that you doing that is an incremental step of being better at running. So like I've got some goals floating around in my head, like running or specific goals, and per 80% of what I need to achieve those is just put on some running shoes, some shorts, and go out the door for an hour, and that's all I need. I mean, it's super simple. There's complexity that you can add in, different types of workouts and whatnot, but I love that it's a simple activity that I can directly track the progress I make towards my goals, timing myself, doing track workouts, whatever. Um, but it's also a way for me to show my um, it's not so much motivation, but I have it's now like just part of who I am is I sleep in my running shorts, I get out of bed and I go running right away in the morning. It's habit at this point. And it's something that I try to have as I guess sort of a bedrock in my life. And it's this is what I do. I can see the progress I make, and I know if I just transfer that kind of mindset, that mentality into other things that I do, I will incrementally get better. So it was the same thing with data science when I was studying in the boot camp. Okay, I just have to spend 8 hours a day studying this, and I will incrementally get better. And I could track that progress by looking at my code from 2 weeks before and see how much better I got. I can and it's like that with any other skill. So running is just a simple application of stimulus and response, and you can see that improvement over a very short period of time.
So you think it's helped you in your life outside of physically?
Uh, it's a time where I get to shut off my mind. I don't usually have an internal monologue going about how much I hate running or how like how much pain I'm in unless I'm doing a workout. But it's so yes, it helps me clear my mind for an hour a day or whatever. It also I want to take those learnings from my habits of running and translate those into professional life, and that's something I'm working on. I'm less good at it professionally than I am with running.
No, that's 100% true. And I've seen that in my life. Last year, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my career. I was applying for new jobs. Wasn't happy at Exxon. I was toying with this idea of starting my own business, but I was pretty nervous about it, and it just seemed risky and kind of hard. And so one day, I was in Utah at the time, just visiting. At like 3 o'clock, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I really wanted to hike this mountain, Mount Timpanogos, and my trip was coming to an end. And I was like, if I don't hike it today, I'm not going to hike it." But the thing about Mount Timpanogos is it's like an hour drive there, an hour drive back, and like a 6 to 7 hour hike. And this is at 3 o'clock. And I was like, okay, so 2 hours of just driving, 5, and then like a 7 hour hike. That puts me at midnight. And I was like, oh my gosh. All right, I'm just going to do it. Yeah. And so I started at 4:00 and everyone's walking down and I'm walking up. And I got to see the sunset, and like it was super hard and it got really dark, and I hiked the rest of the way down in the pitch black. And it sucked, honestly, but I survived. And I knew after doing that, I was like, you know what? I can do hard things, and I can do spontaneous things. And I actually promised myself I was going to start a business at the top of the mountain. I totally understand where you're coming from. Yeah. I love that. I had a quick question here from Charles. What's your 5K time for cross country?
Unfortunately, it's still my high school PR is 18:36.
Fast.
I should have. I was planning on beating that this spring, but after I got injured running the Houston Marathon, I couldn't use that fitness to do like an 18 flat 5K or something.
Well, man, I think that's impressive. My 5K right now is like 30 minutes. So maybe I am not running too fast. Maybe I'm still going slow.
Well, I mean, the whole thing with running is you are always faster than somebody on the couch.
True. 100%. That's 100% true. Anyways, awesome, Matt. Thank you so much. Love talking data with you. Love talking running with you. Loved hearing your advice. I hope people, do projects. They talk about it. They stop posting their certificates and post their projects. They think about, okay, do I actually want to be a data scientist, or am I more interested, in business intelligence or data engineering, and just think about that a little bit. And yeah, hopefully we can help some engineers. This helps some data engineers and geoscientists figure out their path a little bit. So thank you so much for joining us on the Data Career Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Avery. It's been a blast.
Yep. Okay, everyone. Thank you guys so much. Follow Matt on LinkedIn. And yeah, look forward to talking to him again in the future. All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.